Honorable Dr. Matembe is a distinguished Ugandan politician, anti-corruption crusader, and gender rights activist. With a deep passion for justice, she has dedicated her life to advocating for women's empowerment and fighting against corruption in Uganda. Born into a humble family that made a living through farming and small food business, she developed a strong sense of resilience and determination from an early age. Aspiring to be a lawyer, she sought to be a champion of the rights of women and the marginalized. Over the years, Matembe has played a pivotal role in shaping policies that promote gender equality and good governance. Her fearless stand on corruption and women's rights has earned her both national and international recognition, including the Women Heroine Award in 1998. Honorable Dr. Matembe, welcome to the brief.
Thank you very much.
You are a renowned anti-corruption activist, a champion of women's rights. But let's start from the beginning. What was your childhood like?
You know why I'm laughing? I have told this story I don't know how many times, thousands and thousands. So when it comes like that, I say, hey, you mean they haven't known yet? Anyway, my childhood like, probably I may begin by telling you that as you know, my God's purpose for my life is to fight for gender equality and women's empowerment. Actually, to fight for equality, justice, and fairness. But my path of fighting for that is through gender equality and women's empowerment. And this is linked to my childhood. My childhood living experience of inequality and fairness and injustice meted onto me as a girl and other girls in the village and women around is the one which sparked off my passion and shaped my childhood dream to do what I did and what I continue to do. So, what was my childhood like? I was born in a village, peasantry family, who were not rich, as you know, peasants, and I had 8 siblings. 5 were boys and we were 4 girls. One good thing is that my father, and I'm saying my father, not including my mother, took all of us boys and girls to school, unlike other parents in the surroundings. Why I'm saying not my mother, because at that particular time, my mother being a woman had no participation in decision making. He was not the one who could choose that girls would go to school or not. It was only men who were taking decisions within the families, and these decisions were very, very biased against the women, the girls and women. So I'm grateful that my father at least sent us to school, but many, many girls in the area did not have the opportunity to go to school. And even me, who went to school, I experienced discrimination in comparison to my brothers. I was coming after brother. My mother used to have boy, girl, boy, girl. He only missed the last girl because otherwise it would have been 5 by 5, but he stopped at 9 with a boy. Started with a boy and ended with a boy. But there was this brother of mine whom I was following. We were together all the time like twins. And when we went to school, like peasantry people, whenever there would be no school fees, his school fees would be found. Quickly, they would chase us away, but his would be found quickly, and me would take like 2 or 3 weeks without going back to school. As if that was not enough, whenever my mother was a leader of Mothers Union, in Mothers Union, as you know. Whenever she would have a meeting of Mothers Union in the afternoon, and at times it would be fellowship for Christians because she was saved, and at times it would be a marketplace, market time. So those 3 afternoons I would not go back to school, and yet my brother would go because I would stay with the siblings. And this went on and went on. And yet I was expected to perform as well as him, who is getting better opportunities which I'm not getting. And what this one put in my heart and in my mind, a question as to why. Why not him also stay? Why not all him not getting fees and I go? Why? And it was disturbing my mind. And that was not enough. I would see women come to our home and they sit under the tree and they are telling my mother their stories of suffering and violence. At times I could see them cry together. But this thing was disturbing me until down the road I came to hear, and those are girls, and they are women. In other words, they were saying like women and girls are not equal human beings. They are like, it doesn't matter how you treat them because they are not full human beings. So I perceived it that way, and it was disturbing me until when I was like 9 years. That's when I came to hear the word pleader. I said, who is a pleader? They said a pleader is one who pleads for others. And then I said, but when I grow up, I would like to be a pleader and plead for women and girls because they are not treated well. And I asked, what do you do to become a pleader? They said, you need to study law. So at 9 years, I made up my mind that when I grow up, I would study law and see what is this law saying about this situation of unequal treatment for women. And then I would be able to call women and girls and tell them, please, let us refuse. We are being cheated, let us refuse. And actually what even empowered and strengthened my dream to plead was that when time came and we did P7 with my brother, he repeated in P6. I found him in P6, then we went together in P7, and in P7 I got first grade and he got second grade. And that time with second grade, you wouldn't continue, you would repeat. So I went to Weranyanji Girls Secondary School, fired to go and study and become a lawyer, and he repeated P7. Now when I was getting into senior 2, he passed to go to senior 1. Can you believe it? You can't imagine that my mother came, sent by my father, to come and withdraw me from the Weranyanji Girls Secondary School to go and study teacher to Kakoba Teacher Training College, where there was a college training for primary teachers. Because there they were not paying school fees, then I should go there. I said, no, I'm not going there. The headmistress, moreover, who was also a woman, said, you see, Miss Kovrunga, you have to feel sorry for your parents. The school fees is not enough. I said, why not send a boy to study the teaching? Me, I already have a dream. He said, no. So I said, no. Is there no bursary? I hear of bursary. Said I hear of bursary, and they said it can be given at Mbara District Education Office. I asked my mother, do you know where it is, that office? She said yes, but I don't know how to speak English. I said, you take me there, I'll speak it for myself. And to cut the story short, at 14 years in senior 2, I managed to secure bursary for myself, which I studied for throughout the whole of secondary education until I went to Makerere. And as if that, when I reached the HSC, that's when I learned about British parliamentary history. I said, oh, I learned that the law was made in Parliament. Now my childhood dream to become a lawyer was enlarged, extended to become a member of Parliament. I said I would become a member of Parliament and change the law if I find it was not good. And imagine, even when I was called to Makerere, still the dream killer, my father was there. And he said, you are my daughter, you cannot study law. Not in my house, not in, I'm ostracizing you. I'm giving you this to know the environment in which we were coming from when we went on the public platform to fight for gender equality and women's empowerment. And the passion, you can see where my passion comes from. I had even to fight my father, but decently, because I told him, you man, me, I'm not the one who called myself to study law. You go to Makerere University and tell the headmaster, of course, the peasant man did not know vice chancellors and that kind of thing. Tell the headmaster that you don't want me to study law in his house because girls could not study law, not medicine, not technology. No, no, no. We were meant for nursing and teaching. If you ever study, that's what was there. There were bars preventing you from going to study the rest. So as I grew up, as I came on board, I was looking for a time when I would get women and shout and say, please, come and we resist. Talk of resistance movement. Me, I started resistance long ago because my father didn't know where to find Makerere University. He let the sleeping dogs lie. So I ended up, by grace of God, studying my law. And one thing I thank God for, whatever, let me tell you why I praise the Lord, why I love the Lord. I call myself the favored of the Lord. Because for sure, here I had wanted to study law and see what it says about women and girls, and I wanted to call the women and girls in my village to shout to them and say, let us refuse. And I wanted to study and become a member of parliament, but what did God give me? Not only did I study law, just 1 degree, but as now you know, I'm Dr. Miriam Matembe with a doctorate of laws, plus master's degree. And not only did I have opportunity to shout and call women in my village, but at the national platform, I stood at the regional platform, at the international platform. I have co-founded many NGOs at regional, at national, and my shout was so loud that in fact in 1998 I was chosen as one of 100 women heroines world over who have made a tremendous impact and contributed so effectively on the gender and women's empowerment battle, who have acted as the role model for the girls of the world and uplifted and empowered the women in this world. Can you imagine? And then of course making the law, I thought I would go to parliament and just make the law. Not only did I go to parliament of Uganda, but I ended up being as one of the founding members of the Parliament of Africa, Pan-African Parliament. And not only did I make the law in Uganda Parliament, but also at the Parliamentary Parliament, but also I found myself as one of the 2 women out of 21 member commission, the Odochi Commission, which made the Constitution of Uganda, to find myself as a woman who, as one Miriam Matembe with her dream to make the fundamental of the law of the land, the Constitution of Uganda. And not only did I make the draft, but also was a member of the Constituent Assembly, and I was the final, one of the people, the Legal and Parliamentary Committee, who put the seal on the Constitution of Uganda.
Wow.
What can I give to God but only to say glory? Because He made me fulfill my dream and even go beyond, by the way, becoming the first minister for ethics and integrity. You know, for me, my fight is about justice, equality, and fairness, and therefore corruption cannot appear good before me. So I ended up being the first minister for ethics and integrity, responsible for fighting corruption and building ethics and integrity in this country without even dreaming about it. I really praise the Lord for what He has made me to be.
You know, you have played a significant role in shaping policy on gender equality. What have been some of the biggest victories in our country?
Victories, leave alone policies. But the whole idea of getting women from those barriers which I was telling you, that right now the women can study any course. You know, when I became a lawyer, we were just three women in the whole of Ankole. I was the third one actually. There was this lady, she passed on when she was Lady Justice. She was the daughter of Reverend Tibechinga in Bushenyi. She was Lady Justice Margaret Chireju by the time she passed on. And then there was also Lady Justice Byamugisha, Constance Byamugisha. I think she was the sister to Honorable Kategaya. Unfortunately, she also passed on. God rest their souls in peace. So I was the third one. Imagine the whole of Ankole. But now if you go to Ankole and ask, where are the women leaders? There are so many, breaking the ceiling, the engineers, there are so many, the women doctors, the women flight engineers, the women architects, the women, all these were not there, I can tell you. Then women in business, in the economy, traveling all over China, you know, importing all these things and trading in international economy. CEOs, members of parliament, cabinet ministers, every position in this country, name it, women are there. That was a very huge breakthrough. Now, when it comes, because it was a question of recognition, I remember in our first organization called Action for Development, we confounded it, wanted to see action in the area of women and development. When, at one time when we wrote the first book, we entitled it Women, it was entitled Visible at Last. We were saying that finally women are seen. Do you think they were not being seen? Even when I was struggling, women and girls were there being seen but not there. They were not seen in terms of who they are, to be able to use, to be able to be set free, to use their talents and their God-given wisdom to realize their full potential for the service of this nation and themselves. We were there, but we were not doing that. Now, eventually, I think we wrote, when we established radio, Mama Radio, then we said women audible at last. Then we could be heard at last. And eventually, when in forward, we wrote our book, Forum for Women in Democracy. I remember when I was launching it, I said the next book will be entitled, we called the book The Rising Tide. At that stage, women have risen up like a tide. And I said that the next book will be entitled The Roaring Wave. But unfortunately, the wave never roared.
You won the Women Heroine.
One of the 100 women heroines of the world.
Yes. Mm-hmm. How did it make you feel? How did you
feel? You know, by the time I got it, actually, I got it at my apex. Because I had done all these, and I had even been appointed the Minister for Ethics and Integrity in 1998. That's when I was appointed. And by the way, this award was looking at every year. I think they were choosing one woman every year, and they were marking the women who started the struggle for gender equality and women's empowerment in 1898 up to 1998. By that time, I had been on the public platform for only 13 years. You can imagine, out of those 100 years, me, I had just been there for 13 years. But when they went to choose I, Matembe, was one of them, and the only one, by the way, in this country, Uganda, at that time. And you know how I got it? Those days there was no internet, no nothing. I got the envelope from post office. And when I opened it, I found it had a camera. It had a letter and a camera. And it was saying, we are pleased to inform you that you have been chosen as one of 100 women heroines.
Wow.
One of 100 heroines of the world, rather than hero. You know, hero is a man. Heroines of the world. They should have said heroines of the world. And they said, for your impactful work on the women and girls of the world, being a role model, courage, confidence, and intellect. And I looked at this, I said, my goodness. They were saying, you take a picture, send it to us, and you will come to receive your award in New York. I tell you, you should have seen Miriam Matembe in New York holding the Uganda flag flying. These people of Uganda here, who consider me as nothing in their government and where the world and God knows who Miriam Matembe is. But I was so amazingly surprised, I couldn't believe it. You see, for me, my passion has nothing to do with myself. It is about the women of this world, the women and girl children. It is about that. And that's now what I want to tell you, to tell the women and all the people listening to me. That's why God said, when our motto in Weranyanji was saying, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, the rest you'll get. Because for me, my focus, my dream is fighting for justice, fairness, and equality. And of course, as you know, justice and righteousness is the foundation of God's throne. In other words, I'm fighting God's battle. I fight God's battle. And the appeal I want to make to the women, why is it that even after 20 years of my living official work, I am still running with the same passion? Because my purpose is serving God and his people. Serving God and his people. And that's why I, for instance, was able to be recognized and acknowledged like that. Now, you know, you were asking me about other policies. We have made, like, for instance, the law against gender violence. That one. The law against gender mutilation, genital mutilation. We have the co-owner. We failed to get the co-ownership clause of land ownership, but at least we secured some laws to say that before the husband can sell the land, at least the wife should be sought. We secured this affirmative action where women must be in the constitution. It is constitutional, where a third of the women in constitutional bodies which are made must be women, and even in the local council, and then also at parliament. As you know, we secured 1.5 at Makere for girls. Oh my God, we did all these things which we did in changing the policies, regulations, and rules are the ones which have made women reach where they are, to the extent that now, out of the 5 head government officials in the executive, 3 of them are holding very important positions: the vice president, the prime minister, the first deputy prime minister, and the 3rd deputy prime minister. Actually, President Museveni is the only one on that team, because Moses Ali is sick. 3 women are there controlling, governing, but unfortunately, now women are in power without power, which was not our situation. That's why I say the wave never roared. We were in power, with power to influence the governance agenda and make it responsive for women's concerns and interests.
Well, what is your take of the empowered woman of today? Is it what you pictured when you were just starting out?
What did I want? I must first tell you what I wanted. I wanted women and girls to get equal opportunities with men. That's what equality means. It doesn't mean that men should turn into women or women turn into men. No, that they should be exposed or granted equal opportunities to exercise their God-given talents and wisdom and realize their potential for their own development, development of the family, development of the community, and development of the nation. That's the battle I was fighting. Now, if you tell me, is it what you wanted? Of course, when I see women in all these fields, in all positions, it means not all of them. I told you the wave didn't, the roll did not, the wave did not roll because the tide did not turn into a rolling wave. Because in the villages, in the rural areas, in whatever, the chains are still there. Many chains are still bonding women all over the place. But even we who are educated right now, the chain of lack of knowledge of both men and women about the value and importance of women. If men and women would know the value, when I use the word value, God saw that a man could not be alone. He could not do anything alone without the help of the woman. The moment that is understood, and it is understood that the help was not making beds or washing clothes, but God meant intellectual help, God meant emotional help, God meant wisdom of women joined together with men, they would make a complete, perfect human being to exercise their rights and rule the nation as God had wanted. But that one, we have not achieved it here. The other thing which we have not achieved fully is, of course, economic empowerment. Because even women, you ask those women in parliament, even when they have all that money which they get, which you can call economic empowerment, their husbands or their boyfriends or whatever are still controlling. They still control them. Women are not yet free, like me, Miriam Matembe, to earn their resources as an individual and invest it the way they want and use it the way they want. One of the things that is causing trouble when they say women's empowerment is breaking families, that's a lie. It is not women's empowerment which is breaking families. It is inability to understand what women's empowerment means. It is inability to know and appreciate women's power, preventing them from exercising that power for the progress of the community and the nation. Let me tell you, honestly, if you go into a home where both man and women understand and know that they are both equal human beings in their own right, and they both have talents, and they both have wisdom, and they have potential, and they free one another so that each may be free to use that wisdom and potential and everything, those families are very happy, and they are strong, and they are grounded. It is only in families where men are resisting because of that ego and inability to understand who is a woman. I do not understand why people think that a woman is less of a human being. Oh, she's a girl. Oh, she's a woman. What does that mean? The scripture tells us that God created them, both men and women, in his own image. And he told them, go and produce and multiply and rule my creation, both of them. You see what I'm talking about? If all these Ugandans, I'm not saying they don't understand, could get what I'm saying, could appreciate what I'm saying, and say the value in it, the marriages will not be breaking. Why should they be breaking? If I'm earning, I have a better job, a more earning job, and I'm a woman, and for you are earning less. Why shouldn't I now be able to be free to work and come and I can buy a vehicle and I can, as long as I'm not demeaning you, as long as we are working together. If for you are not working and I'm working, why shouldn't you take care of the children at home while me I'm earning money which is going to help us to move forward? You see, the culture and these customary culture and norms and misunderstanding and misapplication of scriptures have played a big role into imprisoning women and preventing them from excelling. You know, I give one biblical example of a woman. If when you are a Bible reader, there is this woman who was called Deborah. Deborah is a judge. He was by then a judge in the kingdom of Israel there. Among the children of Israel, and there was this army which was disturbing the children of Israel, and it was revelation was made to Deborah that they can go and defeat who was this Jab's kingdom. So he told the army commander, Barak, that you go and attack the Jabin kingdom. The army commander said, unless you go with me, I'm not going. And Deborah said, if you go with me, then it will be the woman who will win the battle. And Barak did not care. What mattered to Barak was that she saw in Deborah what it took to win the war. She didn't see a woman here. She said, me, I'm Barak, I'm the commander of the army, but this woman has what it takes to win the battle. So Deborah said, okay, I am going, and Barak followed. And indeed, down the road, the battle, that man, I've forgotten the man who was Sisera, I think he was Sisera, and he was killed, by the way, killed by Jaire, who was a rural woman in the village who had known that Deborah has a rose, and Jaire wanted to support a fellow woman. That's why I tell people you should network together. And so Deborah and Jaire, they won the battle when Baraka was not the one who killed the enemy, but Baraka understood. So me, I'm telling men who are even married or not married, you just see what it takes. What do you want to realize in your purpose and in your objective? If you see that it takes the wisdom and the talent of this woman in your life or in your office, could be your wife, could be your office, could be in your organization, if you have wisdom enough as a man to see that actually this woman has it takes to achieve that what you want to achieve in the family or in the organization or in your office, please let this woman come on and excel, and you support, you join her like Barak. Let Deborah excel and Jaire, and they defeated the war. After all, the war was not there. They finished, they won the war. So why should Barak have fought and what? So many women say, me, my woman, I will manage her. She will see me. And when you do that, the woman also, by the way, let me tell you, God created us as rulers, both of us. Although down the road on sinning, God told the woman that man would rule over her. She didn't take away that gene of ruling. So when you see men fighting women and women are resisting, it's because God created them with the rulership DNA. Do I call it DNA or leadership aspects or whatever? So me, my call to the men, please first let them understand that women are not only equal human beings in their own right, made in the image of God, but they have extra. Let me tell you, women have extra, something extra on top of men. As you remember, we came from the rib of men. Men came from the clay. We came from the rib. The rib was tougher. The rib was harder. the rib was finer, but it comes from the man, which means it has all the particles that the man have, so we have them. Okay, so God saw that there was still something missing from men, which he put into the women. So let me tell you, women, as you remember when Adam saw Eve, he just burst out into a poem. He was not speaking, but he spoke. So I'm calling upon men, if they want to see the whole battle of gender equality and women's empowerment be beneficial for their families and for their homes, instead of condemning it, if they want to see it work, let them look at a woman as a full human being in her own right, but more value. She has more value which God put into her in terms of her emotions, her brains, her intellect, to beef up the man so that they may work together.
The women that you started this empowerment journey with, most of them have not stepped aside to let the young women or the young blood
have not stepped aside. This is why I need to teach you. You know, I'm a teacher. I run with this battle. I'm a teacher focusing on women. Now I want to ask, how does one woman Kadaga, one woman like this, prevent young women all over Uganda to come and take the positions? For instance, if you look at me, I got off long ago in 2006. If I asked you to name the 4 women that followed me, I don't know whether you remember them. You should look at whether they are impactful. If Kadaga has been impactful, if she's working so hard, and if she wants to contest, why should she be stopped from contesting? Because affirmative action, this you will call me another time and I teach you what the purpose of affirmative action was. It was not to be temporary. It was to create a seat to enable women come into political positions in parliament and also give their views, and give the views that were only known by women, by the way, on top of the other views. Because what affects women reason differently, they think differently, and when you put men at the decision-making table alone, they miss that thing. So I don't agree with you that women have stayed in positions of power and prevented others from going there. After all, a woman's seat is one woman's seat. One of the reasons why a woman's seat was created is that we would inspire other women. I'll give you an example. By the time I left Mbarara Women District seat, I started as one. When I did so well, as you can imagine, the men and women in Mbarara said, hey, so women can also do it. Why don't we send other women? And the women themselves said, hey, so we can contest. And next round, Winnie Byanyuma came and joined me. One man was dropped. And you know, Byanyuma was Vibrant and Firebrand and myself. Next, the other round, next elections, another woman, Mary Mujenyi, came in. So by the time we left, without me leaving my seat, I had attracted more women. We were 3 women now in parliament. So this business of saying when you stay in one seat, the others can't go on, they are lying. We have left the seats for them. Even for instance, the Mpangas came on first, they left and we came on, and now other women are following us. Look here, I founded Akford long ago, 40 years ago. So many other women have ruled, maybe the one who is there who has taken like 10 years. For us, we never used to do that. And this is another thing I must tell you for women to learn. Going to service should not be about you, and leadership is if a successful leader is about nurturing other leaders, and therefore both men and women should nurture leaders. Why aren't you telling me why President Museveni is still there? She's still there. Don't run away. She entered with Kadaga. Why is she still there? And Moses Ali is still there, and these others are there. Why don't you name them? And you name Kadaga being the only one one remaining. So don't raise that again, and I want men and women hearing me to stop saying that when women get there, they close doors for other women. We don't close them. We don't. Men also close them. If it is a question of self-centeredness, both men and women are self-centered, and they close doors because they don't go there as successful leaders. They serve themselves and not other people.
Looking at the political atmosphere today, what challenges and opportunities do female politicians have?
For me, first of all, I want to say that I thank President Museveni and the original National Resistance Movement government, because it is the one which established the political conducive environment for women to come on public platform and excel. It is the one which did that. So whether I disagree with him now, it doesn't mean I don't give him credit for that. Because if he had not come on board, I would never have realized my childhood lived dream. So I give him credit and I thank him. And I thank the Lord, because he didn't bring himself here. It is God who brought him on board. Unfortunately, right now, in his Museveni 2, we talk of Museveni 1 and Museveni 2. In Museveni 2, there has been conscription, the political civic space has been closed. The freedom, human rights freedom have been closed. And of course, the militarization and monetization of the politics is the order of the day. Conflict and violence is the order of the day. Therefore, the atmosphere is not conducive to free women's participation, and therefore they have been enclosed. Although they are there, they are imprisoned. They are enclosed because either you are in NRM, or when you get out there, you are tortured, you suffer because you are not NRM. And therefore, their freedom is no longer there. They have been captured, and they are, I would call it captured, because they are in positions of power without power. And therefore, I would say that the affirmative action in Uganda has been counterproductive, because there is a big difference between we people and what we did and the current people what they did. For us, we were driven by serving people, getting power to use it in service of others. But the majority of Ugandans right now, both men and women, are driven by self-centeredness. They want to get power and use it for their positions of honor and for their material gain. And so the situation is very, very different, very different. And although we blame the women and say they are in power without power, they are not different from the men themselves. I would say that women now, we cry that women must be at the table to participate in decision making. Right now, all these many women, Simani 34% in cabinet, 34% in parliament, 40 something in cabinet, and all these other positions, they are now on the table like menu. They are on the table like a menu. They are not at the table to choose from the menu, and therefore they cannot, generally they are like incapacitated in terms of influence, in effective participation that would influence the governance agenda and make it responsive for their interests. That's why you see gender-based violence has escalated, the defilement of young girls, the raping, the whatever, all these things are happening. and women are chased out from property and that kind of thing, because those leaders are not passionate about that cause, and they are feared, they are scared that if they come out as vibrant, they will lose their positions in power in NRM, and therefore they are also scared for losing their positions and losing their riches, and so they're just there. They're just there.
You were a legislator, but also a minister. Do you miss the privileges that came along with those positions?
What were the privileges? The privileges which I miss, the one major privilege I miss is that I continue to play my part, but without that official and legal authority. The legal and official authority of Miriam Matembe to influence and act and talk and things are done is what I miss. Because right now, I try. When people run to me, the old people, their land is taken. When the people are raped, the girls are raped. When they are given in marriage when they are young. Yes, I come in with that vibrancy. I go to at times the Inspector General Police helps me. But when I go to RDC, when I ring there and so on, they are corrupt. They do things. I have no powers to arrest them. I have no official powers, I only have godly powers to really get up and rise up and do, but at times I don't solve those situations. I end up very frustrated and pained very much. But as for the privileges you talk of resources, I mean, I was earning only 7 millions. And me, for us, even when I was a minister, I was the one even paying for the bodyguard. I would be the one to give them food. I would be the one to support them, bodyguard and the driver. You ended up actually being so poor because you are meeting so many responsibilities. And so in terms of resources, as a minister, as a member of parliament, I don't miss anything. I didn't call it a privilege, but I miss I feel bad. I don't miss, but I feel bad that I served this country for good 30 years. And when they threw me out like in the garbage, with no pension, with no gratuity, with nothing. In other words, according to Uganda, I did nothing. I did not do any service in this country according to the government of Uganda. And that's what hurts me. Because if I could be recognized internationally, but here, no chakuba, even this award, Simanyu, what do you call it? The Narubale award. Can you imagine me, Miriam Matembe? I never got that award. But I want to tell you that I'm so happy, I'm so joyful, because I stand in the Lord. Whatever I miss, God is taking care of me. I'm not disappearing in oblivion. I'm not lacking what to eat. And don't you see, I've just received a gift. People who love me, they just bring the clothes I put on. You see bags, you see shoes, because I've been serving God and His people.
In the last election, you stood for the elders seats in Parliament.
I did.
You did make it through. Should we expect you in the upcoming election?
First, let me tell you, you know what was driving me there? What was driving me there is the suffering of the senior citizens. When they would come to me, they are crying, their land is taken, they are crying, their grandchildren are beating them, they are suffering, they have nowhere to go, even the taxes. These senior citizens, they paid tax all their lives. By now, they shouldn't be paying taxes, even with a rental like this, and you have to pay tax. So they were suffering, and I was crying out, Vanange will speak for the elderly, until I heard that the elderly are to be represented in Parliament. I said, God, you have heard my prayer, let me go and contest and be a voice to the elderly. You know what I saw? And I thanked God. I said God wanted me to see the evil, the nature of corruption, the nature of greed that has gripped and swallowed Ugandans. God wanted me to see it. Because I could not imagine that the elderly, the old people can be bought, can be You should have seen them being bought wholesale. For me, actually, my elections were not just voter, they were wholesale purchase. Voter purchase, wholesale voter purchase. I was there watching them as the NRM released over 600 billions to fight Miriam Matembe and bring in a woman. Here I was not yet 70 years. They were bringing a woman of 78 years. If I asked you the name of the woman who is supposedly defeated Matembe, when they are interviewing me, when I talk to people, nobody knows her. Nobody knows that she's there. But I was contesting for the national woman elderly representative for the whole nation. But what I saw, the grabbing, the greed, I said, God, thank you for showing me the extent of greed and corruption which has even consumed the older people. You know, they were asking my agents, but you mean Mama Matembe has nothing to give us? You mean Mama Matembe has nothing to give us? And let me tell you, these people, the Electoral Commission was funding their transport, was giving them everything. But NRM, they gave them buses to transport them all the way from the whole nation and bring them here. They put them in hotels and paid for them. All those, the two women, actually, they were two women. Is it Mavanjina? There was me, and I think the central person. Others were unopposed. But they all that money that was spent to defeat Miriam Matembe. Miriam Matembe, who was coming in for usefulness to this nation. Now I want to ask you, what have the elderly or senior citizens in this land benefited from the 5 senior members in that parliament? What have they benefited since they entered parliament for the last 5 years? But if I was there, I can guarantee my voice would have been able at least to influence a policy, maybe on tax, to say that these senior citizens of 80 years, 70 years, on their rentals, on their small farms, on their, selling tomatoes, they should not pay tax. At least I would have secured that. And another thing I would have wanted, I had wanted to get the priority, senior citizens being treated as priority, given priority. When you go to banks, no lining. When you go to the hospitals, you are given preference. This is what happens in the outside world because of knowing that this nation, Uganda, actually is who it is because it stands on the shoulders of those senior citizens who are now suffering with nobody attending to them. So you wanted to ask me that would I want to go back to do what? What would I want to do? In fact, if this NRM government knew the value and the wisdom of Miriam Matembe and her talents, they should not have fought me because then I would have influenced the betterment of the citizens. But now I saw what I saw. God wanted me to see what I saw. Now why could I really be wasting any time I go to contest?
What is your view about the landscape of ethics and morals in this country?
Even by the time I left, I was fighting. But when I left with the fight. I want to ask you, do you know do you know, by the way, the name of the current Minister for Ethics and Integrity? You are from New Vision, aren't you? Do you know that minister?
The lady, she was involved in the Mabati saga.
Very good. You are telling me the lady was involved in the robbery of the Mabati. So now, if the head of the Ministry for Ethics and Integrity was part of those who stole Mabati, moreover for Karamoja, for her area, now you can tell me the level of ethics and integrity. If the Prime Minister himself, if the Minister of Finance, all those who were involved in taking those Mabatis, and nothing You know, you can only fight corruption by punitive measures. You can have reactionary and punitive measures. They were not even punished, I'm telling you. So what does that mean? That go ahead and steal, go ahead, corruption is okay, stealing is okay, and that's fine. Therefore, the ethical values, the ethics and moral values in this country is really at the lowest, to the extent that I don't know what people define as ethics. I don't know what they call. We depend. What drives the government of this country is the engine that drives the government in this country is what? Corruption. Therefore, if it is corruption and unethical conduct to the extent that they perceive elections as a war, instead of looking at elections as the process through which people, citizens who are entitled to choose their leaders are supposed to choose their leaders. Instead, they turn it into a war and they use it to fight the citizens and the leaders they want to choose. What sort of values and ethics are those? So, Mao, unfortunately, he's part of that fish, used to say that the fish rots from the head. So the rotting, degeneration and of ethical values and breakdown of ethical values and degeneration of morals starts from the head, from the government of this country. Unfortunately now, the man is with that head.
Why did you leave NRM?
What did I leave?
Why?
I didn't leave NRM. There is a national resistance movement, government, which I worked for, okay? After that, there is a national resistance movement party, which I never joined. Therefore, I never left anything. The national resistance movement, our bus, they took it and threw us out of the bus. Me, I never left. I was thrown out of our bus, which was the government of this country. And why was I thrown out? For standing on truth with integrity. For standing on what? On truth with integrity. Because as a commissioner who made the Uganda Constitution, the draft, and I traversed this whole country, and they told us that the problem of Uganda are leaders who don't want to leave power peacefully. And we asked them, so what do you want? They told us we must put a presidential term limit for every president who comes to rule Uganda. And in 2003, when the president's term was ending in 2006, the president called us to Chankwanzi and told us that he wants to remove the presidential term limit. And I faced him right as you know me, without fear or favor, and I told him it is corruption, it is unethical to tamper with our constitution in that way. And he said, get out of my bus. And he stole the bus and went and now filled it with the party.
If you met Mr. Museveni today, what advice would you give him?
Very, very clearly, I would say, sir. And I gave it to him that time. I gave it to him at Chankwanzi in 2003. I said, sir, you've done so good to me. For us as women, I wouldn't want you to be one day abused and being called swine. Because he used to call the Amin and the Obote swine. I said, I wouldn't want you to be called swine, sir. It would hurt me. Therefore, I'm calling upon you to leave power. Don't remove the term limit. Leave power and let us organize form our party, organize it, and then you will be in Wachitora and you will be guiding and giving us direction as the new leaders who will take the nation. He refused. It is since that time, it is now 20, when I told him, it is now going on to 20 years. Okay? He remained there, things got worse. Now I want to ask you, what do people call President Museveni? Is he still highly regarded and honored in the presence of the international community, in the presence of Ugandans who are fearless? Is he? If he were to go now, my advice to him now, which he can't take, because he's so much obsessed with power. By the way, I told him before I left, I said, you know, I told him face to face, I said, you know, somebody said that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I told him power has sat in your head. If you know the conversation I used to have with Muzei, straightforward, clean and straightforward. And he doesn't actually expect me to say otherwise. When I say things the way they are, he knows that is Matembe. You can't change her, she's like that. You see? So even right now, I will tell him, sir, what haven't you heard? And the thing which hurts me with him, for him to think that in this country there is no other Ugandan who can lead this nation. And I used to give him the proverb, the Chinyankore proverb, that awakure nume, that is Uganda, ahakuzire enimi takura wemwe. N'Abaganda ndoza bakigamba wakure n'imiti wakura we n'endara. That there is not only one bull in a crowd, there are other bulls in a crowd. So I used to tell him that. And recently, sometime I saw him speaking Runyankore and saying, how can I leave Uganda? I can't. Where can I go? I can't leave Uganda to you. You are failing to rule it even when I'm here. I want to ask, has he given us opportunity to rule Uganda? Has he given it to us? He was saying, you have failed to lead Ugandans when I'm still here. You have refused to go. You go and see whether out of 40-something millions in this country, they are very brilliant Ugandans. Intellect, the new technology now, the technological people with modern technology, with sharp brains, with innovative brains, they are there, but he is the roadblock. And now what's enough that he wants to hand over Uganda to his son Muhoozi, as if Uganda is a kingdom. If I met him face to face like this, the very words I'm telling you is what I would tell him, and he would look at me and receive them, although he would not take my advice.
Anti-corruption activist and champion of women's rights, Honorable Dr. Miriam Matembe, thank you for speaking to The Brief.
You are most welcome.
New Vision TV. Stream smart, stream New Vision.